Good morning. My name is Deb Doherty, and I'm asking for your support as I run for council this time. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I moved to Collingwood in 1988, and I established Duncan's Cafe, which is still in existence downtown, although I don't own it anymore. And so I've got a pretty good background in small business and what it means to run a small business in this town. I was president of the Chamber of Commerce in Collingwood in 1994. I was on council from 1996 until 2000, so I have experience on council. You've heard a lot today, and I'm sure the messages are all starting to blend together. We're all talking about economic development. We're all talking about fiscal responsibility, the waterfront, and a voice for citizens. But what I'm going to ask you to do is take a look at the track record of this council, current council, and consider voting for change, because there's been no mention and no activity about the waterfront up until the last few months, when citizens organizations have come together and said, hey, what are we doing with the waterfront? There's been no activity on economic development up until the last 6 months, conveniently just before the election is called. In the meantime, we have 3 years of catching up to do. Talking about taxation. Taxation won't change overnight, but what we do need is a council who appreciates the value of brick and mortar facilities that last for time immemorial, as opposed to tents with a 20-year shelf life. I want to illustrate something that saddened me so much. I declared in January so that I could have the time to get out and talk to people in the community. And back in the early spring, I was wandering around in one of our newer neighborhoods. And I spoke to 3 families on one street. One was leaving because his job was leaving town. One was leaving because they can't afford the taxes and they're moving to another community nearby where the taxes are lower. And the third one came to Collingwood from away with teenagers, hoping to find a better, safer, more enriched growing up experience for their teenagers. Now, their teenagers don't play hockey and they don't swim. There's nothing for teenagers to do in town, and that's not a good thing. We need to embrace, there's a demographic shift ongoing in our community right now, and I do not believe that this is being recognized, that every single one of these brand new developments is young families with kids. And they're not feeling like they're part of the equation right now. And so we need to embrace every member of our community. We need to bring them in and listen to what they have to say and act. So please support me, Deb Doherty.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rupert, and some of you may know me as a real estate broker. That's been my occupation here for the last 15 years, in both a broker and a market value appraiser. I first moved here in 1985. I was transferred here with Goodyear Canada out of Toronto, so I was in charge of all of the marketing sales of the various host products that were manufactured here in Collingwood. I left the community in early 1990. I was out of the community. In fact, I was out of the country for 4 years. And then I subsequently returned here in 1998. When I decided to run for a council position, it was not something that I took lightly. I was sort of on and off again about it. But the more I attended council meetings, the more I listened to some of the statements that were being made, I just felt compelled. I absolutely had to. And one of the turning points for me was in January, February of last year. We all received a large 4-page, 4-color newsletter in our call-us bills. And in that newsletter, it was stated that in year 1 of this council, they kept taxes low. That's a direct quote. In year 2, they kept taxes and user fees low again. Claims were made such as they developed a long-term solution to Collingwood's recreational needs that was tax neutral. Now, what it's tax neutral, but spending $13 million of our money and doing so with a sole source deal. Not to mention adding another 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 potentially onto the operating costs of running the two facilities. And I've looked at the Parks and Rec budget for last year. Their expenses were in fact up 500,000 to 7.5 million from 7 million the year before. As we sat in the all candidates meetings the last couple of weeks, and I've reviewed some of the videos that are online for anybody to view, there is a great disparity in a lot of the claims that are being made by the current council. First of all, they're claiming that the average tax increase has gone up less than half of 1% in the last 4 years. I'm a realtor. I deal with taxes every day. I'm into the land registry records. I'm into the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation's website. My own assessment has gone up over 3% in each of the last 4 years. My taxes have gone up about 9%. That is based on just the Collingwood only portion. They're taking credit for the blended tax rate. So they're taking credit for tax reductions from the county level and from the educational levy, which they have no control over. So, there's a disparity there. At the meeting the other night, two of the incumbents claimed that debt had been paid down 7.4 million. A few minutes later, the other one said 7.5. Okay, that's only $100,000 difference. But at the mayor and deputy mayor session that night, Mayor Cooper initially said debt was paid down 9 million. Later on that night, said it was 9.5 million. How can we possibly run what Mr. Gardhouse has said is a $50 million corporation with such a wide-ranging, vague reference to numbers, none of which make sense, and none of which can really be truly accounted for? We cannot have this moving forward. I agree with Mr. Saunderson, in the first 90 days of the new term, we do need to develop a firm, solid, strategic plan. First of all, we do have to get an accurate understanding of what our finances actually are. A lot of the town's ills can be cured if we have more revenue coming in. And that's going to depend on a strong economic development plan. We do need jobs. We do need commercial entities coming into town that do pay a higher level of taxes. I've heard some of the incumbents describe and we've heard it here today, that we're flourishing, that we're prosperous. Mayor Cooper referred the other night at the all candidates meeting, the downtown was, quote, fragile. There's another example of just the inconsistencies of this council. So my message the other night was, when it comes to fill out your ballot, there's one single question you have to ask yourself. Who do I trust to look out for my best interest and to manage this town for what it is, and that's a $50 million a year corporation? Please vote for me, Rick Crouch. I am fully committed to working with the other new candidates that share the same position and same opinion that I do to make this a better community. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Gail Michelino, and I'm running for council. I will be new to council if elected, and I'm hoping to bring to council a new perspective on how to govern the community. I believe completely in transparency and integrity, and that is how I've always run my life, and I would bring that to council. I also am very policy and procedure oriented in everything I do, and I would also want to bring that to council. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised here. I'm third generation here. And I've been married to my husband Don for 42 years. Sometimes he says, "Is that all?" It seems like a lot longer. But we have two wonderful children, two boys, who fortunately have decided that they want to live in this community. My son John is a teacher, a science teacher at John Van Yank High School. And my younger son is a commercial pilot and a flight instructor, and he's part owner in Genesis Air at the Collingwood Airport. So he's part of a local business that's striving to improve the aviation aspect of our community. I am a graduate of the University of Waterloo, and for 10 years, prior to moving back to Collingwood with my family in 1981, I worked for the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing in Toronto. And so I have a fairly extensive background. I'm currently the Executive Director for the Housing Resource Centre, and I have 13 years of managing a nonprofit organization, so a lot of responsibility for ensuring sustainability and fiscal responsibility for a nonprofit organization, and I've built that organization from the ground up, and it is now a model for all of the housing support services that exist in St. Clair County. Our organization was the template for the future organizations. Throughout my career and throughout my time living in Collingwood, I have been involved in any number of things that have brought new things, new improvements to our community, including, in fact, yesterday we were at the Walk a Mile in Shoes event, which was really amazing. And I reckon back to when in 1983 we were sitting at a conference put on by the Ministry of Citizenship and Culture at Cranberry Inn, and being amongst the Collingwood representatives who said, wait a minute, you just hosted a conference on violence against women in our community and we don't have a shelter. And so that was the start of a committee that then implemented a women's shelter for our community. I was at another event where they were talking about daycare centers, etc. And at that time, John Vanier High School was just being built, and they had money that they didn't really know what they were going to do with. And so I talked to them and said, talk to the principal at John Vanier High School and see if you can put a daycare center in there. It happened. So there's a number of different things in my career that I have been able to establish that I think have improved the quality of life. My brochure, if you take the time to read it, outlines a number of community outcomes for Collingwood that I envision as being a part of what we should be trying to strive for as a council if I'm elected. And I would like you to take the time to read that, because it's definitely things that are doable, and if we have a strong council and partnerships within the community, because we have a lot of wonderful people in this community. Volunteerism is amazing in this community, and we can accomplish these outcomes. On the back of my brochure, I have a number of different key issues that I feel should be addressed by council, and I will not take the time because so many of them have already been outlined, but I will ask you to read my brochure so that you can see that I also am on the same page with a number of other people who have goals for what should be accomplished by a new council. So if you are willing to support me and elect me, I would appreciate your vote. Gail, like my vote. Thank you.